February 19th, 1945, 0900 hours, the volcanic ash beaches of Iwo Jima. Lieutenant Robert Dunlap, 27th Marines, pressed himself against the black sand as Japanese machine gun fire tore through the air above him. 30 yards ahead, a concrete pillbox erupted with muzzle flashes. His rifle had jammed, clogged with the cursed volcanic grit that covered everything. 3 Marines beside him were already dead as a Japanese soldier burst from a concealed spider hole less than 10 feet away. Bayonet fixed and screaming, Dunlap had 1 second to draw the heavy pistol from his hip holster. The Colt M1911.45 automatic barked once. The Japanese soldier's charge ended instantly, his body crumpling backward as if struck by an invisible sledgehammer. In the hellish intimacy of Pacific Island warfare, that single shot represented something the Imperial Japanese Army had catastrophically failed to understand. American firepower wasn't just about numbers, it was about stopping power. The question that haunted American combat reports from Guadalcanal to Okinawa was both tactical and psychological. Why did Japanese forces consistently underestimate the lethality of American small arms, particularly the Colt 45 pistol, only to have that miscalculation cost them dearly in the brutal close-quarters combat that defined the Pacific War? The answer reveals not just a story of weapons engineering, but a collision between 2 fundamentally different military philosophies regarding courage, technology, and what actually wins firefights at arm's length. Japanese military doctrine in 1941 carried the arrogance of an empire that had conquered Manchuria, humiliated China, and shocked the world at Pearl Harbor. Their infantry training emphasized the spiritual superiority of the Japanese soldier, the perfection of bayonet charges, and the conviction that American troops were soft, undisciplined, and would break under determined assault. This wasn't mere propaganda. It was an institutional belief encoded in training manuals and tactical doctrine. Japanese soldiers trained with the Nambu Type 14 pistol, an 8mm semi-automatic that American intelligence officers would later describe as adequate for intimidating Chinese peasants, inadequate for stopping a determined enemy. Firing a relatively anemic 8x22mm Nambu cartridge generating roughly 162 foot-pounds of muzzle energy, the Nambu represented Japanese priorities: lightweight, ease of manufacture, and the assumption that pistols were essentially ceremonial weapons for officers who would lead with swords and spirit rather than firepower. When Japanese troops captured American positions in the Philippines in 1942 and examined the heavy Colt M1911 pistols, intelligence reports noted their reaction ranged from amusement to dismissive contempt. The weapon seemed absurdly large, over-engineered, and indicative of American reliance on material superiority over warrior spirit. They could not have been more fatally wrong. The Colt 45M 1911 wasn't designed for target shooting or ceremony. It was designed to stop charging enemies with absolute certainty, and its developmental history revealed American pragmatism at its most uncompromising. The pistol emerged from bitter experience in the Philippine-American War, where American soldiers armed with 38 caliber revolvers discovered that determined Moro warriors, often drugged or in religious fervor, could absorb multiple body shots and continue attacking. The US Army's response wasn't to question soldier courage or improve training, it was to build a bigger gun. John Moses Browning's M1911 fired the .45 ACP cartridge, generating approximately 400 foot-pounds of muzzle energy, more than double the Japanese Nambu, but raw numbers told only part of the story. The 45 ACP's large, relatively slow-moving bullet transferred enormous hydrostatic shock to the human body. Military medical examinations from Pacific combat revealed that center mass hits with the 45 created wound channels averaging 2.5 inches in diameter and consistently produced immediate incapacitation. The Japanese had built a pistol for officers to carry. Americans had built a pistol to instantly end close-quarters combat. By 1944, Colt, Remington Rand, Ithaca, and other manufacturers had produced over 2.7 million M1911 pistols. The weapon weighed 39 ounces loaded, held 7 rounds in the magazine plus 1 in the chamber, and was standard issue for officers, NCOS, vehicle crews, and specialized infantry. In the confined jungles of Guadalcanal, the cave complexes of Paleliu, and the bunker networks of Iwo Jima, that pistol would write its legend in the most intimate and brutal combat of the war. Guadalcanal taught the lesson first. Marine Corps after-action reports from Henderson Field described night infiltration attempts by Japanese soldiers who had studied American defensive positions and believed they could exploit perceived American fear of darkness and close combat. On the night of October the 25th, 1942, Japanese forces launched coordinated attacks against Marine perimeters. What followed shattered Japanese assumptions about American resolve. Corporal Mitchell Page, commanding a machine gun section, found himself in hand-to-hand combat after his position was overrun. His pistol accounted for 3 confirmed kills at ranges of less than 15 feet. His report was clinical. Each man I shot with the .45 went down immediately and did not get up. No second shots were required. Similar accounts flooded through combat reports from Tarawa, Saipan, and the Philippines. Japanese soldiers who survived to become prisoners expressed shock at the immediate stopping power of American pistol fire. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi, commanding Japanese forces on Iwo Jima, had studied American weapons carefully. His tactical instructions to his troops explicitly warned against underestimating American firepower and advocated for positional defense rather than banzai charges. He understood what his predecessors had not. American weapons were designed for efficiency, not ceremony, and the Empire's spiritual superiority meant nothing against hydrostatic shock and massive tissue trauma, but institutional arrogance died slowly. Even in 1945, Japanese training manuals continued to emphasize close combat with bayonets and swords, weapons that required the attacker to survive long enough to reach the enemy. Against Marines and soldiers armed with M1911 pistols in the narrow confines of bunkers and caves, that survival proved impossible. Combat analyses from Okinawa documented that American personnel armed only with pistols achieved higher casualty ratios in close quarters than Japanese troops armed with rifles and bayonets. By war's end, the statistical evidence was overwhelming and damning to Japanese tactical doctrine. Medical examinations of combat casualties revealed that soldiers shot with Nambu pistols had survival rates exceeding 60% if they received medical attention within 2 hours. Soldiers shot center mass with the M1911 had survival rates below 15% under identical conditions. The difference wasn't marksmanship or courage, it was physics. American ordnance testing demonstrated that the .45 ACP cartridge could penetrate 4 inches of pine board or 12 inches of packed earth, enough to reach targets behind standard field fortifications. The heavy bullet retained enough energy after penetration to still cause fatal wounds. Japanese pistol ammunition, by contrast, often failed to penetrate even light cover. In the savage environment of island warfare, where every cave entrance and bunker opening became a potential killing ground, this difference was existential. The US military produced over 3 billion rounds of .45 ACP ammunition during the war years. Pistols that had seemed excessive in peacetime proved perfectly suited to a war where combat distances often shrank to conversational range. Japanese forces adapted too slowly, trapped by doctrinal rigidity and industrial limitations that prevented them from developing comparable weapons, even when battlefield reports screamed the need. The Pacific War's close-quarters combat delivered an unambiguous judgment on the collision between Japanese martial philosophy and American engineering pragmatism. Japanese soldiers trained to value spiritual fortitude over firepower discovered that courage couldn't overcome hydrostatic shock. Officers who carried pistols as symbols of rank found themselves outgunned by American NCOs carrying weapons designed for immediate lethality. The Colt M1911 remained in US military service until 1985, a 74-year operational lifetime that testified to its fundamental effectiveness. Modern forensic analysis of Pacific War combat has only reinforced what battlefield reports documented. In the intimate brutality of jungle and cave warfare, the immediate stopping power of the .45 ACP cartridge saved countless American lives by ending threats before they could close to bayonet range. The Japanese military's fatal miscalculation wasn't technical ignorance, it was philosophical blindness. They built weapons that reflected their values of discipline, austerity, and spiritual superiority. Americans built weapons that reflected their values of overwhelming effectiveness and bringing overwhelming force to bear. In the volcanic caves of Iwo Jima and the jungles of Guadalcanal, that difference was measured in survival rates and casualty statistics that told a story no amount of warrior spirit could overcome. The ultimate reason Japanese troops learned to fear American pistols was brutally simple. The Colt 45 was designed to stop human beings with one shot, and it consistently delivered exactly what it was designed to do.